All righty, let's head out to the Bud Light guest line. All guests appear on the Bud Light guest line. Bud Light, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. And this is Steph Curry's longtime personal trainer, Brandon Payne. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Hey, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm gonna start out with just a little different one. I was watching Sean Payton's press conference today in Denver, and he talked about the trainers of the players, because a lot of players have their guys. And how is your relationship with the Golden State Warriors, and is it different than other trainers who have their guys? And how does that kind of all work? How do you build the trust of the Warriors, vice versa, and have a progressive relationship?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question, and it is something that you do have to navigate as a personal trainer of players in the league. I mean, you have to make sure, number one, that the teams that the players play for understand that you're there to help the players perform within the system that they have as an organization. I think where it can kind of get off the rails a little bit with some trainers is they're a little bit they feel like their voice should carry more weight than the coach's voice sometimes, and that's just not the case. So, what I do with obviously I've done it with the Warriors and Coach Kerr and Bob Myers and everybody there has been great with me, and obviously we've built up a lot of trust over the years. Is I make sure that I communicate with the team as much as I communicate with the players to let them know, what we're doing, what we're trying to work on. That I'm there to help everybody involved, not just the player. And with the other players that I work with in the league, it's the same thing. So, obviously I've done some stuff with Trae Young. I've done some things with Michael Porter. And, I make sure the organizations know that I'm there to help everybody, to help the player play better within their system, help the player play better for the coaches, and make sure that everybody knows that I'm not there to be a divisive voice. I'm there to be somebody to help the player play with the organization. And they appreciate that. I think a lot of younger trainers don't quite understand that dynamic, and it can create some friction, and it creates, an uneasy work environment sometimes when the younger players want to work with their guys as much as they want to work with their coaches. So, just taking that extra step to make sure you're communicating with the team is really important.
Brandon, last year, Steiny and I had the pleasure of sitting down with Steph. I called him Batman, and I called you Alfred, because anytime something's wrong with him, you bring him back. My question is, when you saw this injury Saturday, I'm concerned because I saw how immediately he had to go to the back. When can you get started? And the fact that you guys have dealt, and I know, every injury is different, but the fact that you got so much success together, does that help you in this instance, because this is a different body part?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the fact that we've been through this process multiple times now, and we know, and we've dealt with a knee. I think it might have been either 2017 or 2018. We had a JaVale McGee roll up on him on the free throw line, and we had to deal with a similar injury then. There is a skill to being injured, and there's a process to being injured. And what I mean by that, when I say there's a skill to being injured, is that there's a way that you have to be able to communicate with the team around you, with me, with your doctors, with the trainers, with the Warriors. There's a way you have to be able to communicate exactly what's going on within your body, because the more effectively you can communicate those things, the more effective the treatment that you're getting will be. And so Steph is, he's in touch with his body probably better than any other pro or anybody I've ever been around. And, he's able to communicate the things that are important in a timely fashion to the staff and to the team around them that allows them to recover from these things a little bit more quickly and a little bit more effectively. As far as when I'll get out there and start doing some things with them on the court to kind of help them get back, I mean, that's really up to Rick Celebrini and their staff. And, they do such a great job in their return to play protocols, and they're going to be patient. And as they should be, and they're going to, see how he feels. I mean, as with any injury, it's really how it reacts to the rest and how it reacts to the initial treatment that you get that kind of determines what the timeline is. I know everybody wants to have this defined timeline. Everybody wants to know exactly when he'll be back, including myself. And unfortunately, with the nature of these injuries, you just can't do that. And you have to be a little patient with the process, and you have to trust the people that you have around them that they're making the right decisions, and they will to get him back on the court safely and as quickly as they possibly can.
You're listening to Brandon Payne. He's Stephen Curry's longtime personal trainer on the Bud Light guest line. You mentioned kind of the timeline. Let me ask you this. Obviously, there were some new words we heard in relation to this injury. Steve Kerr even said some of the terminology he'd never heard.
It was new to me too.
Okay, is there anything you can tell a layman that would help us understand what the difference with this one and the other ones, or a regular knee injury, might be? And then just like a day like today, is Steph Curry just sitting on a couch all day long with ice and whatever he does, or is he walking around? And like, how does that work? What do you do today?
Well, number one, I mean, structurally everything was sound. I mean, that's the one thing that Steph told me the other night when we spoke, is that, you know, he felt like the knee was sound. There was no looseness in terms of if you had a major ligament tear, whether it's your ACL or your MCL, meniscus, something like that, there would be some instability there that you could feel just with a manual test. So that wasn't there. So it's not necessarily a stability injury. It's just it's a pain tolerance type injury. You know, how much pain can you take and play through, and it's going to take some time to get through that initial wave of pain. What he would be doing today is he is, you know, primarily a rest day today. They may do some stuff where they bring him in. There are different types of compression technology that you can use. There's compression. It's called a game ready unit that circulates super cold water around the injury to promote not only, you know, keeping the swelling down, keeping the pain at a minimum, but also promotes the blood flow. The more you can get that oxygenated blood into the injury site, the quicker it's going to heal. So they're doing some things like that. I'm sure they're probably doing a little bit of manual soft tissue manipulation. I mean, that's just a fancy way of saying some massage work around it. You know, just to get, again, more blood flow, just get a little bit of movement in there without aggravating the injury. But this will be a heavy rest week for him. I mean, and it really needs to be, because there's still a lot to learn about the injury. There's a lot to learn to how it responds to rest, how it responds to a little bit of stimulation. You know, all those things are factors that determine how quickly you can get to your return to play protocols. And so this is a big learning week. And by the end of the week, I think they'll know a whole lot more than they do today.
Brandon, let me ask you this, because you kind of just touched on it, you and Steiny. There's 29 games left. Obviously, nobody wants to be hurt. Then there's the bear of the postseason. Okay, let's say Steph misses umpteen games. When it's all said and done, and you talked about that rest, can this actually, when he gets back, be a positive that you're not putting more miles on the body?
Yes and no. And, you know, when you talk about it from like a long-term standpoint, yes. I mean, there's a positive that there's games that he's not playing, and so there's mileage that's not going into his body. If you're looking at it from like an in-season load management standpoint, the answer to that would probably be no. You know, those decisions are made in more immediate windows. So I mean, when you're thinking about whether a player is going to play or sit a game, you're really looking at what they've done over the past week and then what they have coming up the next week. I mean, you're kind of looking at that type of window. What happened a month ago really doesn't factor in, because that's not factoring into the current player's workload. So yeah, I mean, the answer to it long term, yes, there's some benefit, but short term in the season, I mean, you're still going to make the same play or not play decisions that you would if you didn't miss the time.
Brandon Payne joining us on 95.7 The Game. He's Steph Curry's longtime trainer. You know, I know you want to stay away from timetables, and I get that, and we all do. You said this was a week of heavy rest and evaluation. It does feel like, you know, there's something a little different about this. Is there any concern that you have just for Steph as a person that, like, could he miss the rest of the year because of this?
Oh no, that hasn't come up. I mean, he would have certainly have conveyed that to me if he thought that was the case. And the same thing, I think, if you listen to Coach Kerr yesterday, I think he said the same thing. Initially, I think with the pain that he felt, he thought that could be the case, but he was really relieved that is not the case. That, you know, he's just going to miss a little bit of time, and then he'll be back out there as soon as he possibly can be. I don't have any fear of this being a season-ending thing, not at all.
Brandon, let me ask you this. Before he got hurt, Steph was averaging 29, 6, and 6. Were you, wherever you watch him at your lab, were you like, damn, my guy's in great shape? Can you describe, what you've seen from him this season up until he got hurt?
Yeah, I've been really pleased with how he's been playing. I mean, other than there's been some ball security and decision making that maybe could have been better in certain situations, and but from a shooting standpoint, scoring standpoint, distributing the ball defensively, I think he's been good. Rebounding the basketball, he's been exceptional. So we're really happy with how he's played. I mean, we obviously we're making notes on things that we can sharpen up and things we can do better, and what we're going to be doing during the off season. But I think that he was playing very consistently good, and that's a good thing. I mean, we want to make sure we're staying in that kind of that range of good to great more often than not, and that's where he's been this year.
Brandon, let me just last one here from me, and obviously, if you look at Steph's career, it's unbelievable. Like, the numbers are unbelievable. And what happened last year? You know what I mean? If you his shooting was just a little bit of an outlier last year. What do you think it was?
Yeah. We talked about it. There were some things from a shot selection standpoint. I thought around the middle of the year, I thought the shot selection wasn't as good as it could have been. I think that there was, there were some maybe forced shots in there that kind of got us off track a little bit. And there were some shots that were probably taken from a little bit deeper than they needed to be taken from, a little bit more often than they should have been. And there was a little bit of a mechanical thing that occurred there, and we got to straighten back out. So it was nothing that really concerned me long term, and he got it straightened out in short order. But I think that as a shooter, confidence is a very fragile thing, even if you're the greatest shooter that's ever lived. And you go through a period where you're not taking the best possible shots, and you don't see that ball going in very often. It can live with you for a little bit. So you got to remember to have a short memory. You got to make sure you're mechanically sound all the time. You got to make sure you're taking the great shots when they're available to you, and passing up on the okay shots when they're not, when a great shot doesn't present itself. And I think there was a little bit of a period there where we probably could have had a little bit of a better shot selection that got him a little bit off. But he, being the great player that he is, being the great shooter that he is, he made the adjustments, and down the stretch and into the playoffs, he was outstanding.
Hey, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And I got to tell you, Steph is the man out here, and you've known him for a while, so we really appreciate all the insight you give us on Steph. It's really appreciated. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right.